In the United States, sexual harassment is a very prominent thing. In a quote from Reese Witherspoon, who is an American actress, she says that there remains what seems like an impenetrable wall of silence around violence, and we must all play a role in breaking this silence. In this quote, she's speaking about how sexual assault is very prominent and not enough people speak about it. There is a differentiation between sexual harassment and sexual assault, and that differentiation is that sexual harassment is unwelcome verbal, visual, or physical conduct of any sexual nature that is severe or persuasive, and it affects working conditions and can create a hostile working environment. But sexual assault is often physical, like touching and actions that are unconsensual to the victim, and these things do happen often. Reese Witherspoon, in her quote, is talking about how it is hard for people and victims of sexual assault to speak up about it because they are afraid of what happened to them, or they are embarrassed, and that people need to speak up in order for this to stop happening. Sexual assault is a part of sexual harassment in the fact that harassment is more of a broad term, and that harassment can include physical contact, but the sexual assault is specifically that physical contact. There are many things that can lead to sexual assault, but sexual harassment is a broad term which then can lead to the physical and unconsensual contact and touching. In my life, I have witnessed sexual harassment, and it is just uncomfortable to be around, and it is just wrong. I have specifically seen men talk about women and what they would do to them if they were able to, even to their face, and just the uncomfortableness. You can tell they are embarrassed by it and uncomfortable and don't want to deal with it, which then leads to them not maybe wanting to do their work because they're worried about what others will say to them while they're working, and they just want to get out of there. This leads into many misconceptions that can be talked about sexual harassment and what it means when it happens.
So what is sexual harassment? According to Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sexual harassment has defined as any unwelcome kind of nature. Unwelcome behavior of sexual nature is considered as sexual harassment. Now, unwelcome behavior is the critical word. Unwelcome doesn't mean involuntary. A victim may consent or agree a certain conduct and actively participate in it, even though it is offensive and objectionable. But it is considered unwelcome when it is unwelcome for the victim. Now it has two types: quid pro quo, which means this for that. In this behavior, a person who is senior to a victim can force victim to do sexual favors for the promotion or something else. And the second one is a hostile work environment. In this work environment, employees are forced to work in hostile environment, such as they pass comments on their sexual preferences, on their gender and how they dress. There are many myths about sexual harassment. First, some people ask to be sexually harassed. The way they dress, how they act, they send signals. However, the reality is being subjected to sexual harassment is painful, difficult, and frequently traumatic experience. Defenses such as she wore proactive clothes and he enjoyed it are neither acceptable nor accurate. The second myth is if a person really want to discourage or stop sexual harassment, they could. Often the harasser is in position to punish the recipient by withholding a promotion, giving a bad evaluation, or giving a low grade. So in this society, men are known to rationalize their actions by saying that women's no is really a yes. And often the harassment continues even after victim, despite the victim's attempt to say no or to stop behavior. The third misconception is most charges of sexual harassment are false. People have nothing to gain from making false accusation and filing false charges. It is very difficult to file sexual harassment charges, and the system can be very hostile to accuser. Confronting the issue can be both physically and financially draining. Usually victims are traumatized by the entire process. Often their experience retaliation and backlash in the aftermath. The third myth is most charges, if you ignore sexually harassing behavior, it will eventually stop. However, in a survey, it has shown that only 29% of women who said that they tried to ignore the behavior said that it really made things better. However, 61% of women said that telling the harasser to stop was the most effective method. Another myth is only women are sexually harassed. This doesn't happen to men, and all sexual harassers are men. However, it is not the reality. Anyone can be a victim of sexual harassment in spite of gender, race, or sexual orientation. And women can also be a harasser. And the last myth is that the seriousness of sexual harassment uh, is aggravated. Most harassment is really minor and involves harmless filtration. Real sexual harassment can be devastating. Studies indicates that the most harassment has nothing to do with the filtration and sincere sexual or social interest on the part of perpetrators. Sexual harassment is largely about control, dominating, or punishment. Research shows that victims most often to leave schools or job to avoid harassment. Many experience serious psychological and health related problems. They may even can be forced to relocate others to other cities.
Okay, and then from here we'll transition to Jenna's testimonial if is provided, and from here we'll cut in the video and edit this part out if she does provide the testimonial. If she does not provide the testimonial, unfortunately she did not send a video to us and she is not part of the recording. If that's the case, please keep that in mind when grading the rest of our parts. This part will be edited out if in the event that she does give the testimonial. Thirdly is the impact of sexual harassment and what can cause to people that do experience it. Now, sexual harassment can have many psychological impacts on a person, and not just the major ways that many people know of having post-traumatic stress and other events from it. Even minor forms of sexual harassment can have major effects on a person. According to the Government Association of International Affairs, experiencing sexual harassment was associated with lower levels of health satisfaction and higher levels of negative physical symptoms within the people that they observed. This is partially from the anxiety and stress that can be inflicted upon the people that experience sexual harassment, as well as the other factors that can be caused by sexual harassment itself, with the employers or the harasser affecting both their financial duress and social life as well, aside from the sexual harassment. The main cause of this is from a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is released when the body is under stress and sometimes in a fight or flight scenario. It is a vasodilator, so it dilates one's blood vessels and helps someone whenever they are in a stressful situation and need to react. it's released in small amounts when someone wakes and exercises, but a very high level of cortisol that's sustained over a long period of time is extremely negative to the body and can lead to many negative side effects in itself. Excessive cortisol is linked to intestinal problems, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, anxiety and depression, weight gain, increased blood pressure, and poor sleep. This is mainly because your body is constantly in a sense that they are in danger for it, and this endangerment response can result in the inability to rest, as well as cortisol limiting your insulin supply and creating a flood of glucose into the body, which can cause large weight gain and intestinal problems. Cortisol can also impair your focus and memory retention, which can be a major factor in impairing the performance at work as well. And this comes into a secondary part of the psychological sort of effects of it is that the bystander effect. The bystander effect is when the presence of other people discourages someone from intervening in something. For instance, if someone is being sexually harassed at work, people are less likely to intervene whenever there are a large number of people around them because they think that someone else will intervene. Whereas whereas the harassment occurs in a smaller group, people are more likely to intervene in itself. This results in instances being reported less and thinking the issue is more minor than it is. And secondarily, harassment can also affect the bystanders. In a correlational study performed by GAO, they noticed that exposure to sexual harassment of coworkers may lead to bystander stress and negative team outcomes such as conflict and decrease in team performance. And this can lead to an economic impact from the decrease in team performance, let alone aside from the compensation and other negative detriments that harassment can have.
Sexual harassment's economic impact is severe in the United States. Many of the psychological impacts expressed by many workers have led to excessive lapses in teamwork and trust in your fellow employee. However, the employees are not the only ones being severely tarnished by sexual harassment. The employers themselves are being severely hampered by sexual harassment claims. And according to the Government Accountability Office, employers have also experienced severe repercussions, including but not limited to cost of damages, legal fees, and the time of resolving a lawsuit. Now, this may not sound major to most people, but many of these claims have led to excessive settlements, such as the infamous one being Bill O'Reilly's Fox News settlement for sexual harassment, where he was noted to sexually harass by catcalling, which would eventually lead to him having non-consensual relationships with his workers. And it led to a $32 million lawsuit against Fox News. Another infamous case was Kapurian's $168 million settlement against Catholic Healthcare, which involved her suffering from several workers who essentially were guilty of catcalling, sexual commentary, and an eventual sexual abuse charge, which involved her getting physically abused. And she eventually won that settlement, $168 million, and Catholic Healthcare was severely hampered by this. Another sexual harassment claim was made by Alfdor against Aaron's Rentals, where essentially she was also a victim of sexual harassment. The sexual harassment led on for quite some time until one of the workers eventually led from sexual harassment to literal rape, and she ended up winning a $95 million settlement against Aaron's Rentals, which severely hampered this company. Final thoughts. Do not do this at work. Whatever you do, this is not tolerable under any circumstances. You should not be treating people explicitly like this in a workplace. Many people suffer from this psychologically. Your employers suffer it economically. No one wins in this situation. You cannot harass people in the workplace. It is not feasible for anyone. You are not going to be loved in the public for catcalling someone. No, a lot of people in the public will straight up denounce you from society because you were pathetic enough to essentially berate another person. Many people, of course, have suffered, including their loss of productivity coming from their psychological problems due to being harassed, their negative atmosphere in the workplace, because the lawsuits previously aforementioned have had multiple instances where it was a majority of workers actually partaking in sexual harassment, low morale, also due to the sexual harassment and its psychological impact, higher employee turnover because many employees do not want to work in a workplace where sexual harassment is so prevalent, costly lawsuits. I have mentioned that many of these are in the multi-millions. These are not small lawsuits. The adverse media attention, because Fox News, Catholic Health Care, and Aaron Rentals have received severe flack from news articles for having such a toxic environment in the workplace and damaged reputation because of this horrible, horrible, horrible workplace environment. Change needs to be made. And I hope all of you can understand why sexual harassment is such a problem.
Again, if Jenna does not submit her part, keep in mind that this was a 4-person recording, and keep that in mind when evaluating our speech. Thank you.